Something like that.
Okay, so everybody, please welcome David Rose. Over to you, David.
Good morning, everybody. Okay, you'll see some of the, and we put some a PowerPoint together to give some pictures of the country, which my colleague Natasha will be pressing buttons and doing the bits and pieces that I can't do two things at the same time, I've learned. The title of the presentation is Sri Lanka in My Life rather than My Life in Sri Lanka. So first of all, welcome everybody. Thank you all for joining today. The subject matter, Sri Lanka in my life over the last 38 years. This is a country I've grown to love and which I see as my, open quotes, home from home. I share an overview of this most special place together with you. Many of you have visited Sri Lanka for business or for holidays. Particularly, it's nice to see online Loretta and Brian, who've been more than once, who've opened the door to us to see the arts and crafts, who've filled their homes with the most beautiful furniture that came, you could never lift it, it was so heavy, from Colombo, and who've been good friends, Loretta bringing her food. One never forgets the first time she came on a Friday afternoon, full of preparation for Friday night dinner. To my cousins, Jeff and Jane, who came, and to so many others who have been and visited us. Stephen Fenton, who came as well, many, many friends. And I'm sure there are others over the years. Please God, after COVID, we hope again to invite and welcome people there. Until then, let's become more familiar with this jewel in the Indian Ocean that was called Serendib, which means island in Pali or Sanskrit, and accurately referred to as Resplendent Isle, until it became a republic of Ceylon, or from Ceylon. So here are a few maps which show its location. That's me, by the way. Hold on. Right. The first map is actually England, Sri Lanka. There you see all the map up a bit, twiddle it a bit. The Sri Lanka is the center of the map. Not a mistake, it is really center of the next map as well, which is the Indian Ocean. A bit fisheye, but you can see the proximity, not only to North Asia, but to Southeast Asia, to Africa, and even to Antarctica, should you be hungry. Following on that, we have a map of the SAARC countries. The SAARC countries are a group of seven South Asian countries, the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. It isn't a free trade arrangement, but there is close business ties and defense ties almost between these countries, dominated by India. Sri Lanka, as you see, is at the bottom right-hand side. We did try to find a geological map to show how before the great tectonic plates divided, Sri Lanka was actually part of India that came up from way back beyond South Africa before the great continent was there. And it spun off until India crashed at some enormous weight right into the north of Asia, and the Himalayas were the result. The next slide is showing Sri Lanka actually in its form as it is today. On the left-hand side, we'll refer this back in a minute. On the right, you can see it as a tourist map. Sri Lanka is a tourist destination we'll come to in a minute, but you can see throughout the country that there are so many monuments, so many areas, and of course, there's this 330-kilometer border, the sea border that goes round. For your information, there is a cycle ride called Round the Pearl, because it looks like a pearl, that takes place every year, obviously not this year. Next. Okay. Here is a map of what Sri Lanka may have looked like in the cartographer's time. This is in my home in Colombo. It's an old map, but shows that the original idea of cartography wasn't quite as accurate as today, but that's how Sri Lanka looked. We have another, which is in more detail, which shows how they have, you see it's Ceylon in the left-hand corner, which is insular, which means island, of course. There's an evolution in cartography we see in the island. And here is Sri Lanka in relation to its size with England. It's approximately half the size of England. You can see that I think we've ignored the fact that I think Northern Ireland's got caught in the left-hand bit. I can see Larne just in a bit of orange up there, but that's the dimension of the country. The temperature, it's equatorial, of course. The temperature is 70, it is 7 degrees north of the equator. We have a monsoon climate. The national flag of Sri Lanka represents the 3 religions of Sri Lanka: the Sinhalese and the Lion, the Christian and the Muslim and the Tamil. Next. Okay. We've got, I continue on my notes. Some of its rich history I share with you. The island is populated by descendants of those who came through India across the Pork Strait, about 20 odd miles, over 2,000 years ago, both Sinhalese first of all and then Tamils. A fascinating history is followed of recent centuries, a history of foreign occupation in cycles of approximately 150 years, each invader bringing and leaving lasting influence. The Portuguese between 1500 approximately and 1650, the Dutch 1650 to 1797 were unseated by the Brits after their success in defeating the French in India in that eastern theatre of the 7 Years' War. Ceylon attained independence in 1948, becoming Sri Lanka on declaring a republic in 1972. Sri Lanka as an island entity, because it was an island, was always a trading nation. And there are significant T's as opposed to S's and V's current today. The first of the T's, TEA, is our daily cuppa, the pure, rich air from virgin rainforest, warm ocean rains from the southern coast, rivers with precious stones and minerals flowing under, give tea processed with the newest technology from leaf to tip its special flavor, capturing the purest essence of the land. Now, you won't be surprised to know that this was written by this company we see up here on the map, Lumbini, who are very, very celebrated, distinguished tea producer. They have their own tea estates and a tea factory. And we're very fortunate that one of my colleagues, Renuka, his family, his wife's family, his family are actually producing tea, which comes in plentiful packets whenever we feel thirsty. Anyone who wants tea, please let me know. So you'll see photos of tea plant. This is the factory at Lumbini. You'll see photographs of tea plantations. Tea, for your information, is grown either at low level, mid-level, or at high level. Deniyai is effectively a low-level tea plantation, but sells very high-quality tea. If anyone's been to Sri Lanka, you will have certainly have gone to a tea factory and seen the sophistication by which they take out impurities, how they roast the leaves, how they transfer it. That's Stephen. That's Stephen. Stephen.
No portfolio. I mean, I heard words like hold to account, dangerous, keeping the presidents from going ahead with power. No, we're not looking at it like that. We're looking at a cabinet with equal status, with portfolios to actually cover the needs of the 21st century for the Board of Deputies. And as such, I urge you to think of it like that, to think of these portfolios the same way as heading a division is to actually head the governance and risk, to head the fundraising marketing.
Hello.
It does not mean
please mute yourself.
We cannot sort of assign one of them.
There we are.
Hi, Stan. Hi. Just watching a Zoom presentation.
Hello, Denise.
Please,
Nice
could
to see you.
you
Good morning.
mute yourselves? Can you make sure you're muted? We're getting quite a lot of interference.
The second, I'll continue. The second of our T's is textile and garments. Sophisticated production operations, supplying market leaders worldwide, export-oriented, compliant with international standards, and enjoying European and UK now preferential tariffs. The niche businesses are now thriving. You can see here technology and machinery have taken over from the old concept. This, by the way, on the right is, I think, one of our factories, right? The third of the T's is tourism. Historical, this is the beach scene, of course. This is taken from a home we have on the south coast on the cliff. You can see we're facing Antarctica. You can't quite see it there. But if you do look on the left of the picture, right in the background, you can see just about, you can see a lighthouse, which is the most southern point in Sri Lanka at Dondra. It is off this coast that there is serious whaling, W-H-A-L-I-N-G, right? Hold it, go back. Whaling, which is one of those luxuries that Sri Lanka has. It's one of the 2 or 3 sites where sperm and blue whales are resting. And this arose because during the very serious troubles which occurred during the 80s and 90s, and also the first 9 years of this millennium, there were no boats or transport allowed within the territorial waters of Sri Lanka. So the whales came there and became their habitat. Now, of course, we've got tourist boats going out, but the benefit is seeing the whales. You'll see one in a minute. So this is the sea. The sea, of course, has got its blessings. As one of my points of the T's, we had the tsunami, which of course is a blight that really, really hurt the country and hurt the lives. So many people lost their lives. 26th of December, 2004. Next slide. Okay. There is Sigiriya Rock. This is very strange. This is a rock in the center of the cultural triangle. On it, there is a whole estate that was put up by Kassapa, who was the son of a king. He managed to kill, I think, his father and his brother. He killed his father. He was then defeated, but he locked himself away there. It looks a bit like Masada, those who are familiar. But nobody ever conquered him up there. Only when he came down was he conquered. But the vista there is incredible. There is, on the way up there, anybody who's been there, a very serious hornet's nest, which those who fear to tread don't go up. Next. Here is the railway. The Sri Lankan railways, of course, were built by the British. And this is one of those marvels of technology that is over 150 years old. The trains, certainly the hill country trains, I see that my friend and colleague Jacques Heugebert is online. He lives up in Bandra-Wello, which is served by these trains. This is the way of life to get around the country. In olden times, of course, it was on horseback. Next. Okay, here's a copy. Here's a whale from a fishing boat just off south of Marissa, off the island. Right. Okay, here's Colombo. You can see on the left-hand side, the circular building is the Bank of Ceylon. We have the World Trade Center, the center towers over there. The Hilton Hotel is to the right. And here there's the Shangri-La Hotel, newly built, most sophisticated, beautiful, beautiful hotel. Ceylon has changed since many of our friends were there. I see Stephen's online. Since you were there, Stephen, so much has changed. And you would be quite amazed with its road network, etc. I haven't got a map of the roads. Next. Okay. There's some really serious hotels as well. This is the famous Gallface Hotel that was it's in the center of Colombo, built in 1864. One of the 5 hotels that dominated travel in the 19th century. There's the hotel in Singapore, Raffles. There's the Manila Hotel in the Philippines. The E&O in Penang, Malaysia, and of course there is the Peninsula in Hong Kong. Right here is Mount Lavinia Hotel, also a very celebrated establishment built on a wonderful site about 10 kilometers south of Colombo. Mount Lavinia was built as the house, and you'll see it on the left-hand side. The house was built by the governor at the time to house his mistress, whose name was Lavinia. I know it was called Mount Lavinia, but that's the only thing we know. It's on a hill. I think that makes some clarification. Right? Spices are a serious part of interest, particularly those who are used to buying Sri Lankan cinnamon should be aware that many, many fake cinnamons are on sale. Be very careful when you take cinnamon. That cinnamon is only solid. I think Renica, maybe online, is a solid item. It doesn't have layers inside. So when you're buying fresh cinnamon, have a look and make sure it's not the substitute. The fourth of the T's, one of the most important, is the Theravada Buddhism. Buddhism is obviously a serious feature of the island. Theravada Buddhism is practiced in Sri Lanka, Burma, Thailand, also Cambodia and Laos. It is a peculiar form of Buddhism, different from that exercised practiced in China. Here you see monks, enormous number of monks coming and going throughout the country, all pay respect to monks. They will have priority seating. There's a serious devotion to religion in Sri Lanka, which is really not seen elsewhere. Next. This is one of the temples. This is what they call a dagaba, which is a solid concrete item, built probably 2,000 years ago. I'm not sure where this one is actually, but this was built. This is another view at night. But the dagaba at Anuradhapura in the center of the country are over 2,000 years old. They are solid cement. You can imagine these monoliths, and at the very top in that tower there is some essence belonging to the Buddha, whatever it might have been, a hair or something like that. Relics. This is Kandy. Kandy is the main seat of Buddhism in Sri Lanka, and over there you can see straight ahead with that golden canopy, you can see the home of the Temple of the Tooth, which is one of the most celebrated items of the Buddhist culture. And once a year, you have the famous Kandy Perahera. I think some of our guests have allowed us to enjoy this. It's a pageant that may take 3 hours, over 120 elephants, firewalkers, dancers, the smoke and the incense. These guys here are the civilian leaders of the particular areas of the Buddhist chapter that is there. There are 3 or 4 that take part. They walk in procession. These are the leaders, they're lay leaders, but the dignity and pomp remind us of how this tradition is centuries and centuries old, and they're still preserved. The Mudalaya, who are the chieftains, are often seen in pictures. If you see pictures, you see dressed exactly as that. Very venerable and very respectful. Okay. Here is the famous tooth, which is born in the Perahera on capricorned elephants, lit up in this whole procession. That is the climax of the procession. The tooth is in there. Rarely is the tooth on display. I think when Her Majesty came to Sri Lanka in 1983, they allowed her total access into the chamber where it was, but very rarely does anyone have a chance to go. Of course, the Queen went in 83. Prince Philip has been, I think, more than once. Prince Charles came for the Commonwealth Heads of Government. Princess Anne came. I remember coming along for a visit. The Duke of Kent came because the War Graves Commission, all welcomed at the British High Commission at the time. We were lucky in those days. There weren't that many people not to invite, so we were invited. And then we come on to what is one of the great sights of Sri Lanka, which is the hill country, and particularly this mountain, which is called Shripada, or Adam's Peak. It's at the summit. It's a site of significance to many faiths. Reputedly, the sacred footprint of the Buddha in the Buddhist faith, in the Hindu faith, it's that of Siva, in that of Islam, that of Adam, for the Christians, St. Thomas. Right at the top, we'll see in a minute what's at the top, but we climbed way back in 1995. We climbed this tortuous route step by step. It's over 6,000 feet high. To see the sun breaking out over the east, you can see it. And as the sun rises in the east, the shadow of the mountain shines on the clouds below. It's a quite a wonderful, wonderful scene that. To go up there, of course, is better, but I must warn you that the muscle pressure when you climb down is longing and linging. Some say that some say this is the mountain which is from the ground when you can see it up. It's a conical shaped mountain. Next. And here is the temple at the top. And you can see the route is really quite steep at the very top. The 2 approaches, one from the north, one from the south. The south is a gradual path, and the north is by steps, and every 20 steps there's a small place where there is tea and coffee served and fruit juices, of course no alcohol. It's a religious site. The visiting times are from December, full moon day. In the Sinhalese tradition, the full moon day is the holiday. That was the holiday that everyone didn't work. Everyone else worked for 7 days a week. Now, of course, the holiday is a holiday for everybody, including the foreigners. Plus also there's Sundays and Saturdays in many places. So some say that when Adam and Eve left the Garden of Eden, they came to Sri Lanka. reputed the sacred footprint of, I've gone that far. We climbed the tortuous route step by step, blah, blah, blah. Some say that when Adam and Eve left the garden, they came to Sripada. It's said that Noah's Ark rested on Mount Ararat. According to local legend, of course, Adam's Peak is the center of the island, is the biblical Mount Ararat. The Bible tells us about King Solomon going forward in time in the book of Chronicles. For the king had ships going to Tarshish with Hiram's servants once in 3 years. Ships of Tarshish would come bearing gold and silver, ivory and apes and peacocks. The port city of Gaul in the southwest of the island is said to be the biblical Tarshish to which Solomon sent merchant ships. So we're not the first foreign visitors going. And I did make a point, the fifth T was tragedy. There are many, of course, but we only highlight and remember the tsunami, which that really terrible man-made, non-man-made disaster. So how did Sri Lanka come into my life? With that background, why did I go there? In December 1981, I had a call from former clients who I'd worked with and had enjoyed a long and lasting trusted relationship, invited me to take them for a festive lunch. What transpired changed the second half of my life. But before proceeding with the events that followed, let me give you some background about myself and my family. I was brought up in a traditional Northwest London Jewish home. My father had left school at 14 to support his parents and younger siblings, and his success was such in developing his clothing business that it became a public company quoted on the London Stock Exchange. My brother and I were boarded at Carmel College, private school, and forged lifetime friendships there, as well as at university, and with members of our own community. I see Mel's online, members of our community, Jeff Levine, Melvin, others as well. From there, I read law at University College, London, and then signed articles with a firm of chartered accountants, earning the princely sum of £8 a week, qualifying with Arthur Young, McKellen Moores, later became Arthur Young. In the years after qualifying, I worked with my dad in his team, growing the business, and in time, moving from the financial to the trading side of our operations. That proved most beneficial later in developing the Sri Lanka business, but especially enjoying travel. And it is in this regard, I was privileged in my early years to have traveled fairly widely, perfecting my French, my Hebrew, and my Luxembourgish, that's Luxembourgish, in the process. Before, during, and after university, 6 months at the Sorbonne, as a volunteer in the Sinai after the Six-Day War, and spending almost 3 months traveling around the Far East, though not in South Asia. After qualification, I spent 6 months working in Luxembourg with Arthur Young. All along, pursuing the holidays of annual ski with a group annually, either at Club Med or St. Anton, and photography, one of those great passions, wildlife in East Africa, and underwater scuba diving in the Sinai Virgin Coral Garden, which in 1982 were to be returned to Egyptian sovereignty as part of the peace deal, aside regular trips, particularly to visit my brother Dennis, of blessed memory, who had made Aliyah to Israel in 1967. Back to that lunch. That's fine. After much reminiscence, the conversation moved to why we were getting together. And out of a plastic bag at the table of this very fancy restaurant appeared a nylon raincoat and the generous offer of 10,000 garments at a price the buyers thought fair. I protested this was not my area, but did ask, to be polite, where were they to be produced? The answer was Sri Lanka. My eyes lit up. For here was a golden opportunity to continue post-Sinai handback scuba diving and photography. And of course, I accepted the contract and returned to the office, where I was approached by my father, who asked me, how was the lunch? Did I get an order? Well, I think I'd better check this out, he said. And with an order, he hurried to investigate. He called our finance director, Ronnie Metzger. Alerted that I had taken an order, he hurried to investigate how the accountant had suddenly transformed to be a salesman. What's your plan? He asked. So I thought, well, I better go over there and check this out. I need some money for the trip. No problem, he said. When the garments are delivered and the monies are banked, your expenses will be reimbursed. So all thoughts of a side holiday evaporated. I did not, of course, make the trip, but learned that valuable lesson. Don't spend money until you've earned it. After the success of the trial, the business grew and grew, becoming an important part of our business, involving regular commuting. When a decision was made to invest locally, motivated by the logic of management by being around, I relocated to Colombo and took up residence as an, open quotes, expat, a very privileged position. So, having reached Sri Lanka, why did I stay? First of all, there's ease of doing business. Now, this sounds a bit like an advert for Sri Lanka, but that's why we're there. We are advertising to our clients why we're there. That's what we have to ask ourselves all the time. Why are we there? What are we doing? How is it working? So ease of doing business supported the setup of the Sri Lanka operation, in turn fulfilling the needs of the protection plan. Because of course my father was older than me, as normally happens, and I managed to fill the void in some way. These were the focus of activity in those early years, with scarce time for that dream pursuit of scuba diving. Colombo proved to be an excellent regional base to sort for our orders, fulfilling the need for trips to Korea, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Thailand in those days were well within a week's travel there and back without jet lag. Of course, it's now moved on. The destinations now are primarily India and China. I'm familiar with the airport, and last minute check-in a target something that goes awry. As some may know, Sri Lankan has an enviable education system with universal free healthcare, always caring for their people. The workforce is talented, hungry to progress in life. There's an enormous pool of talent at our doorstep. English is widely spoken. The disciplined civil service mentality set up by the British is still continues from the colonial years, with some local modification. Communication and IT are sophisticated. Customs tariffs are geared to export business. It's the most easy place to do business. When compared to somewhere, I won't mention the name, but it's an island, it's a country, not quite Pakistan, but the other side of India, which I won't mention the name, where it takes weeks and weeks to get anything out of the port. We get goods out of the port within 24 hours. So move on now. The other reason why I've stayed there, our business teams, we're proud of. Our online design-led, fast-turn production business model has proved its worth, enjoying the support of customers and, importantly, our loyal shareholders willing to support further investment. Our factories and operational teams have worked tirelessly in the face of COVID, lockdowns and curfew to continue operations, preserving employment and security for those who depend on us. I'm so very grateful to my colleague Renika Vijay Singha for his leadership over the years, over the last difficult months, and friendship over the years. I do not forget how after my bike accident and dengue fever, he came from nowhere to be at the hospital. To Michael, our director in London, and his design team, how well you worked through this COVID period, ever mindful to keep our factories in innovation and creativity in full swing. There are so many people who have made a significant contribution and to our business and to my life in Sri Lanka, who have now moved on. Notwithstanding, I'm grateful for their earlier commitment, which propelled our business through very challenging times in the 80s and early 90s. You cannot imagine the difficulties during the late part of the 80s when everything was virtually closed down, and how our team were imaginative to get goods out of Sri Lanka. Thank you, guys. Still, we encourage English tuition and sponsor private school education for management who have served over 5 years with us. We try and pass on the advantages of education to our teams. So it's not all work, there's social life and hobbies. First of these is quality friendships. From 1983 through 2009, the country endured ethnic turmoil with the Tamil separatist movement severely denting investment and business confidence. Tourism severely suffered. Aside, Added, there was also a left-wing insurrection, 86 to 89, which resulted in most expats working for multinationals leaving the country. Those who stayed, such as myself and many others, standing firm in support for our business and our loyal teams, earned trust and became accepted within the local business and social communities, accepted as part of and parcel of the local circle. Friendships then developed are still sustained 35 years on. How true my dad's observation, quote, overnight sensations have been around for 30 years. We still meet people who say, I think I remember you, but you have changed a bit. Of course, we've all changed a bit. Friends meet in the constantly growing choice of quality restaurants as business settles down after the 2009 peace established after the end of the Tamil insurrection, or at home where vegetarian curries and whitefish are always available on their menus. Early this year, at lunch at supper, to bid farewell to a parting banker, I was introduced to the European Union ambassador, who sounded with his accent French. So clearly an opportunity, Eva, to practice what I learned at the Sorbonne. I asked in my best French, where are you from? He says, I was born in Luxembourg. The answer, change of plan. And all 300 words I'd learned in Letzebuoish way back in 1972, acquired and honed to perfection, were brought to use. The other guests completely dumbstruck at the singing of raucous bar songs that I never understood, but I knew the words. The ambassador's returned to Europe with his artist wife, his reputation intact. We remain good friends. A particular thank you to my dear friend Felicia Sorensen, the curry queen, whose imaginative cooking has changed the humble curry into a master dish and revolutionized the Hilton's menus. She makes the chaîne des rôtisseurs, which is our special dining club, that much more special. We have social business clubs, like everywhere, but developed from early beginnings. Friendships that we engineered together introduced membership to various clubs. Foremost, this, our dining club, the Chaîne des Rôtisseurs, enjoying international standard cuisine, both in Sri Lanka, Colombo, of the past. Can one ever forget black pepper ice cream as a substitute for having no main course? Additionally, having been invited to membership of the prestigious Colombo Club and the venerable Hill Club in the hills of Norelia in the early days when few were around to join, are privileges much valued. Aside, of course, the rowing club with the best bar in town. Freemasonry, how can I forget? As a district in English Freemasonry, Sri Lanka is familiar territory to those whose masonry has London origins. The principles of the order are promoted. Self-improvement without commercial or other motive. Disinterested friendship with respect through benevolence to those in need. There's great fraternity amongst our brethren with regular meetings that are both instructive and enjoyable, aside the proximity of the bar. We travel to attend meetings countrywide and also regionally, India, Malaysia, and through the Far East. While COVID has necessitated restriction of physical meetings, the Zoom has opened opportunity for constant virtual meetings pursuing knowledge and fraternity. I'm privileged to contribute and have senior responsibilities. I wish I could do more from London. Knowing that I'm only a call away, I trust, is more reassuring to our District Grand Master, Right Worshipful Brother Ferrard. The rituals in some orders are based very much on the books of the Tanakh, of the books of the Bible, particularly Joshua, Judges, Samuel, and Kings, as well as Chronicles, and of Ezra and Nehemiah. Myself, this has motivated much further study, delving into books and commentaries, which I have in my home library in Colombo. And then there's exercise and charity cycling. The weather encourages outdoor activity. It rains in short bursts or in torrents, depending on the dry season or whether it's the southwest or northeast monsoon. A topic suitable for its own dedicated talk. For sure, the warm climate dries too soon for one to enjoy the cool of the wet. Howbeit in London. My choice activity is cycling. Early morning with a serious group who have been known to leave me standing or Sunday afternoons along the coast, and from time to time longer trips returning from lodge meetings outstation. Preventing my falling victim to zealous racing driver buses is an art our driver Upal, who follows me, has thankfully learned to my advantage. Only one accident of note. Over the years, I've cycled week-long 400-kilometer overseas rides on 10 occasions in support of the Norwood Foundation for the Challenged. Thank you, Stephen and Valerie, who are online, for supporting me in this and encouraging me. All are memorable and funds raised for such a good cause. There was never enough training and always painful early days on the rides. But on the final 2 days, the adrenaline ever wins over and the whole experience afterwards enjoyed. In 2012, the ride was in Sri Lanka, home territory. Here's a picture of home territory, right? Uphill climbing 6,000 feet. It rained throughout, as you can see. Pamela came to follow the ride and cheer. Listen up. There's no bar to age, Brian, Loretta. It's all about enjoying the exercise and camaraderie. The personal feel good is enormous. I shouldn't forget in April 1982, about the time that I was contemplating coming, I completed the London Marathon despite a serious leg injury, hobbling the last 13 miles, surviving only because my cousin Jeff kindly administered the necessary dose of whatever it was. Arriving when the crowd had almost dispersed, still on my feet, I felt quite dejected. I came home, nobody was there, but watched the highlights and saw that David Coleman had given me 15 seconds of center page, a consolation prize recorded. One of our clients had actually promised me some support if I waved, doubled his donation because I actually got that time. There was another marathon in 1998 arising from a visit to Sri Lanka from one of our customers from a French company in Lille. This was in Bordeaux at the instigation of this customer. I think somebody, okay, never mind. So is it there? This is a truly unusual event, the Bordeaux Marathon. Not only was everyone else in fancy dress, but the run through the vineyards with glasses of plenty from serious chateau. I have no recollection how I finished, only that I boarded the return flight in my shorts. The happy days and my personal team have made it so. I have been so blessed with the long-standing support of those in my immediate office. Carol, my long-suffering PA, who reads my thoughts before I express them, ever there, regardless of other priorities, having to work international hours regardless where I am, never failing to respond when needs must. To Upal, who delivers me wherever I need to be swiftly and safely, knowing every shortcut and traffic jam to avoid, beside the long weekends.
David, you think you can come out of your screen, the shared screen?
I don't know how to turn this off. That's it. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Never failing to respond. To VJ, my former house manager and driver, a true manager of situations always solved, who fought his cancer but so sadly passed away. To be able to see his children privately educated, he drove himself immensely to secure his future. What?
Someone's drawing something.
Somebody's drawn something on the screen. I don't know who it is. I don't know, but are you okay to listen in? All three.
David, I need to mute everyone else.
Thank you. All three made life away from family for the past 25 years or more so much more bearable and manageable. I do not forget how they organized in only 2 days, when Pamela was able to confirm her visit, my 70th birthday party at home, with friends and family all sharing in the joy of that celebration. Such as they are a gift.
David, I think I think we have an unwanted visitor. Any chance you can come out of, if you can mute, there's someone called Malinga. I don't have ability to mute.
I'm mute. Can we mute it?
Yeah.
It's Malinka who is doing it, I think.
Yes. I think the host has to mute everyone else so that we can hear David.
David, you're the
I
host.
didn't know they do.
You mute everybody. Hold on.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. You have to remove Malinga from the group, I think, from the meeting.
Yeah, can you remove? Can we remove him? Hold on. Malinga. There's Malinga, remove him.
I need to stop sharing.
Okay. Just half a second, guys. Go into the participants and take Malinga out. Mute him.
No, I can't see the cursor. There's literally no mouse anymore.
Oh, I see. Who is it?
There.
Go to participants, yeah? I think somebody's played with us a bit.
Right, there we go.
Okay, fine. Can we just remove, go to
I'm
participants?
trying, wait.
I think he's gone already.
Has he?
Now he's called David now.
Oh yeah, Subhash. How do we mute?
Oh.
No, remove him. He has changed his name. He's changing his name every time. I think he's a fraud inside the meeting.
I don't know how he got in.
Wait, let me just mute on.
Attendez.
I think maybe you can mute all the participants. Put
I've
everyone.
muted all the participants now, I think.
And we heard her. How can it be? We've got her. Oh,
She's the host.
So your co-host.
She's the host.
Can anyone speak so we know that you can hear me? Can anyone speak so we can see if we've muted you?
Yeah, everyone's.
Right. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Can we share back to share screen? Yeah.
Share screen.
Right.
That's Carol. Can we just?
Which one do you want on?
I just want to get. There's Renica.
Yeah. Which one do you want on?
Just to go. I just go back. Go further down to. Just leave it like that. Just leave it on me for a second. Okay. There are so many people who over the last 25, 38 years who have been true friends in need and deed. I thank them in their lifetime, for we never forget better to put one flower on the chest rather than a wreath on the grave. Particularly to my fair friend Sena Pereira and our friend and brother Dr. Suresh Brito, who we deeply miss. And then come to Jewish life in Colombo. The great synagogue in Stuart Place was, with nearby buildings, demolished in the 60s to make way for the Rotunda Gardens. Today, there is a fully equipped Chabad house that serves food throughout the week, and on Shabbat, on the Sabbath, holds services with supper lunch to follow. Aside business visitors, it caters mostly for young backpackers, often experiencing their first exposure to the warmth and tranquility of a real Shabbat. Then there is the Jewish Federation that links the many Israelis in Sri Lanka, meeting occasionally at Chabad, which has branches in the east and southwest, where many surfers gather, probably the only place where three-wheeler drivers speak Hebrew. There's a representative to the World Jewish Congress and to the Commonwealth Jewish Council. Myself, I maintain and manage a kosher home and welcome those who care to dare to share my cooking. Pamela, my sister, on her many visits over the years, has instructed on cooking fundamentals such as chicken soup, salmon fish cakes, and stewed beef. Upal is a professional. I'm still an apprentice. Historically, aside King Solomon's merchant vessels, history records some very notable visitors of Jewish tradition and faith. As early as the 9th century, Rabbi Binyamin of Tudela reported in his writings, Sefer HaMasot, that there were about 3,000 members of the Jewish community. The Portuguese harassed the Jewish residents who fled to India, settling in Cochin. The Dutch following, the Dutchman Leopold de Voort, a Jewish man, composed the first translation of the Quran into Hebrew. During British rule, there were 2 Jewish Chief Justices. Sir Sidney Abrams, most celebrated, his challenge to the Governor General on fair treatment for those unfairly expressed is widely respected today. Then there were the 3 de Worms brothers, relatives of the Rothschilds, who grew coffee up in the hill country until a pandemic disrupted the crops. The orchards were uprooted and replaced with tea plants brought from China. Their business flourished until they left. Leonard Woolf, husband to Virginia, was assistant government agent in the South. His book, Villages in the Jungle, is considered the best novel in English ever written about Ceylon. And there are others of note. Mrs. Musaeus Higgins, particularly founder of a large, important Buddhist girls' college, finally named after her. Today, very much a leading educational institution. Foremost to me is the legacy of the poet Anne Ranasinger, born Anneliese Katz, in Essen, Germany, whose experience of growing up in the Hitler years, leading to Kristallnacht, after which her parents sent her to London, are memorably recorded in her poetry and books. Her parents were murdered in Chelmo in the 1940s. She herself passed at age 91 on the 17th of December, 2016, just a few days memorial, the 17th of Kislev. A close friend, clearly remembered and sorely missed. Few. Huh? Somebody's writing things on the screen. I think it's really terrible. A few who were on the Roots visit to Auschwitz-Birkenau in November 2016 will forget Robertson Lindy reading of Anne's poem At What Dark Point in front of a cattle truck on the railway line. I give you only one poem. Hold on. I want to read just one poem. It's called You Father. We're almost there. You, Father, stand in your heavy, dark coat against the winter tree, ice on the lake, and 2 small ducks that were caught afloat by winter frozen. The sun is behind me as I take this photograph, and what I make is a last sad record, though I could not have known. The sun behind me is cold and white and projects my elongated shadow. It falls black between us, yet lies so light on the innocent, powdery snow. You do not smile. Is the sun in your eyes? Or now I wonder, could you have known? For the last 9 months, in conclusion, in dealing with the uncertainties of the COVID crisis and managing a business in Sri Lanka, including Zoom and Teams, the values of our beloved parents of blessed memory, the importance of education, charity, the treasured traditions of our faith, community, and seeing us grow up in a happy, close, loving, secure family has been a solid foundation and guide for our path through life and carried us through together. Pamela, my sister, as you know, is a long-standing member of South Hampstead, an accomplished leading criminal defense barrister, warm, compassionate, a dog lover above all. Over the past month, she's been a pillar of strength in what started out as a week's visit in March, but is still ongoing. Thank you very much.